meeting is being recorded.
All right, you are now live.
Cool, thank you. Hi, everyone. I will call this meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. All right, I'll just quickly read the HRM land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We'll start today's meeting with a roll call and a V check. When I call your name, I ask that you just say that you're here, and if you can, turn your video on. But for Councillor Trish-Purtier, I already know that you are here, and you don't have to turn your video on if that's hard right now. But yeah, we'll just check that everyone's mic is working. So we'll start with Councillor Laura White.
Good afternoon.
Well, thank you. Councillor Jean Saint-Amand. Oh, right on time. I don't know if you heard that.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I had to restart my computer right as I tried to join.
Of course, it's that time of year, I guess. Zoom updates and things.
Exactly.
Cool, thank you. We know that Councillor Trish Purdy is here, but if you want to do a quick hello, that's cool too.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Glenn Babcock.
Well, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
We can, thank you. Anne Sinclair.
Hello, everyone.
Great, thank you. Jamil Sino.
Hello.
Hello, thanks. Kathy Stevenson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Oliver Keith.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Celine Vautour.
Hello, bonjour.
Thank you. Nicholas Harris.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you. And Rochelle Manette. That's me. I'm here. You can all hear me. Hooray. All right, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. So I will now ask if there are any errors or omissions for the minutes of September 15th, 2025 meeting. If there are none, I would invite a member to move the following motion: that the minutes of September 15th, 2025 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting be approved as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jean Saint-Amand. And I need I heard a seconder, but I couldn't see who that
was me, Councillor White.
Cool. Great. Thank you. All right. So I will call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Looking like everyone, but just in case, all those opposed say nay or raise your hand. Great. Looks like none. The motion has been carried. We will now move on to the approval of the order of business for today's meeting. To our legislative assistant, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There are no changes to today's agenda.
Great, thank you. So now I will invite a member of the committee to move the following motion: that the agenda be approved as presented.
So moved.
So moved. I believe that was Jean Saint-Amand. Great. And a seconder. Thank you, Jamil. I see your hand. Great. Thank you. The motion. Oh, wait. I will call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Aye. Thank you. And all those opposed say nay or raise hands. Great. The motion has been carried. In terms of business arising out of the minutes, there is no business arising out of the minutes. I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. Looking like none, we will proceed. All right, on to correspondence, petitions, and delegations. To our clerk, has any correspondence been received?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. And have any petitions to be presented?
No petitions have been received by the clerk's office.
Great, thank you. All right, on to presentations. There are none. So we are moving on to number 8, information items brought forward. There are also none. Moving on to 9, we're going to do an update on housing and homelessness in the HRM. So I will invite Max Chauvin, Director of Housing and Homelessness, to deliver a presentation. I believe you have some slides. I don't know who is putting the slides together. Great, cool.
I am bringing those up right now. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. And while you're doing that, I'll just remind everybody that we're going to hear the presentation first, and then we'll do questions later. So just keep your questions, write them down, unless there's something that like you don't understand or a question that has to be asked for the presentation to move on. So I will that's the reminder. So yeah, go ahead, Max. Thank you.
Chair, can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you. So, as the chair mentioned, my name is Max Chauvin. I'm the municipality's Director of Housing and Homelessness, and I was asked to provide you an update on homelessness. So the latest data we have was a point-in-time count done in November of 2024. There is a 90-some page report with many of these things detailed in it. If you would like a copy, please let Elizabeth know, and we will get you a copy of the whole report. So I'm going to provide you some information and updates from that, but I'm also going to give you some new information that is not yet sort of out in those kind of pieces. So the first thing is, what is a point-in-time count? The point-in-time count is a federally coordinated data collection that counts the number of people experiencing homelessness, and it does that count within a 24-hour period. Along with the count, there is a survey to get some additional information. Some things about the point-in-time count you should know. It's done every 2 years. It underreports the number of people experiencing homelessness because there are people that we don't get to or don't find and things like that. The count is coordinated by AHANS, the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, and HRM, the province, and the federal government all put resources towards it, including allowing our staff to participate in the counting process. What is interesting going forward is that now the point-in-time count is going to be done every year, with the survey done every 3 years, so that we get more information. And I'm going to share an example of why this is important. So we just finished last week the 2025 point-in-time count, and we'll see that information probably in a report in January. But what have we learned about homelessness? Homelessness has increased 93% in the past 2 years. So we went from 586 people experiencing homelessness to 1,132, and that's over 400% increase in 6 years. So homelessness is growing rapidly. Piece of good news is, while homelessness has almost doubled in 2 years, we've reduced the number of people sleeping rough, which is people sleeping outside in tents, by 50%. So we've doubled the number of people experiencing homelessness. Some of those folks are in a shelter. Some of them are sleeping in a vehicle. Some are on a friend's basement floor or something like that. But we have been able to reduce by 50% the number of people sleeping outside, and that is in large part because of the work of the province and the number of shelters and things like that they've been able to open. We do know that the number of chronically homelessness, and you're chronically homeless if you've been homeless for 6 months or more in a year, or you've been homeless for 18 months off and on over 2 years or 3 years. So that's very concerning, because the folks that are chronically homeless are in some ways the most challenging to help them sustain housing. A piece that's not here that just came out recently is there's an organization in Ontario called Health Seekers, and they do research on homelessness. And they've been doing predicted growth models of where's it going to go in the next 10 years. And there is no model, no matter what happens, that suggests the number of people experiencing homelessness is going to go down in the next 10 years. The question is, how much more is it going to grow? And they've done 3 very detailed models, one of them considering if the economy gets worse. We've heard about the tariffs, about recession. if the economy gets worse, there will be more homeless. What if it stays the same, and what if it gets better? So right now we have 1,132. If it's positive, the estimation is we'll have about 1,800 in 10 years. If the economy does not do well, we will have over 4,000 people experiencing homelessness in Halifax in 10 years. And if you take the 93% growth curve that we've seen recently for the past couple of years, and 400 over 6, that as a check to see, does that make sense? The number of people experiencing homelessness, if our city's experience doesn't change, will be 3,800 in 10 years. So we do know that the crisis is going to grow and is going to continue pretty much no matter what we do at this time. We should know of the people that are homeless, 34% were evicted. And the other thing in the update that is important to note is there are 80 beds available in shelters or temporary housing options. And of course, people immediately go, well, why aren't the people outside moving into those empty beds? And it's important to understand that just because it's an empty bed doesn't mean it matches the needs of those that are sleeping rough. So, for example, some of those beds are in a facility that is specific for LGBTQ plus youth. Well, you cannot take a 40-year-old man and put him in an empty bed that's in that type of a facility. There's a whole group of them that are saved for families and so on. So yes, there is space. And this is a huge turn from where we were 2 years ago when there were 200 people sleeping rough and no beds at all. But it's still, we now need to take a look at the capacity and how do we right size that for the people that need it? How do we give them the supports they need? And one of the biggest questions relates to substance use disorder and how many people are struggling with that disease. And yet the rules that we have in shelters and temporary housing don't allow them to access those beds. And so one of the big things that we will continue to talk about going forward. People often ask, who are the people experiencing homelessness? 2 to 1, it's men versus women. Essentially, 1 in 4 are people who were involved in the child welfare system. They were foster kids and things like that. Over 60% of the people experiencing homelessness are Caucasian. 17 are Black, 6 are Indigenous. Both of those numbers are gross overrepresentations of those population in those that are experiencing homelessness. 8 are couples. And couples are challenged sometimes in the homeless community because they want to stay together as a couple. And yet our shelters and many of our other options aren't designed for couples. 6% have children or dependents with them. 4% of people experiencing homelessness have pets, and 2% are experiencing homelessness with friends or other family members. We look at the age breakdown. And so 17% of the people who are experiencing homeless are under the age of 30. 70% are between the ages of 30 and 59. And then we've got, if we take 60 as the cutoff for seniors, we've got 14% who are 60 to 69 and 70 to 79. And it's interesting, one of the largest groups of people experiencing homelessness that's growing is the senior population. And for the majority of them, the only issue they have is they have run out of money for rent. They do not suffer from addiction. They do not suffer from critical mental health issues. They simply can't afford a place to rent. As we talk about youth homelessness, I do want to touch on this chart, which tells us when did you first experiencing homelessness? And if we look at the federal definition for homelessness, youth is under the age of 30. And if you look at this, more than 40% of people experiencing homelessness had their first homeless experience under 30. 27% of them, just over 1 in 4, had their first homeless experience under 20. So as you can imagine, if you have a homeless experience when you're a child, you are much more likely to have it as an adult. And this is why youth homelessness is such an important issue. We do ask people in the survey about their health concerns. 60% tell us they have mental health concerns. Almost half freely tell us that they're struggling with substance abuse. And what's really interesting is I could introduce you to people in an encampment or sleeping under a bush that would get down on their hands and knees and beg you for rehab, like a real 2-year residence rehab program, and there's nothing. And they continue to suffer with that. 45% illness, almost 40% have a physical mobility issue, 38% cognitive functioning, and almost 1 in 5 have an acquired after-birth brain injury. And again, just shows the impact of that injury on people's future prospects and ability to stay housed. People ask all the time, why are people homeless? 40%, it's lack of income. 14%, it's intimate partner violence. And if you add other family dynamics, that 14% jumps to 32, is these problems that people have in their families and being able to stay housed, they get kicked out. We encountered one day a couple of years ago, 8 youth that were all kicked out by their family, and all because of gender issues. 12% lost their housing because it wasn't safe to live in, 10% because they had conflict with landlord, 10% specifically because of substance abuse, and 9% because of rent eviction. But we're very interested in these numbers because if 4 in 10, that 39%, it's simply income. It's simply a money issue. It hopefully can be relatively easy to solve. We do ask people where they have income. So 47% on income assistance, some have employment, and different things that come down about how people have income who are experiencing homelessness. But again, 39% of them report to us that they struggle with being able to afford rent. We've already touched on this, but let's talk about another common question: is where are people from? So we know that 43% of the people experiencing homelessness have been lifelong residents of HRM. Another 9% have been here for 21 to 60 years. Another 8%, 11 to 20. Another 9%, 5 to 10. So the vast majority of people are Haligonians and have been Haligonians for many years. There are 12% that have been here for less than a year. When we take a look at that whole group of people and how many people are from outside Nova Scotia, because we often hear about people coming from all sorts of other provinces, 6% out of everybody we see who's experiencing homelessness is from outside of Nova Scotia. So the rest are Nova Scotians. And what are some updates and next steps? First, we are doing some research with people who have been homeless who are chronically homeless. So that long or that persistent homeless, to really find out why. Why are you not able to be successful in a shelter or in temporary housing? And let's figure out what's missing in those wraparound supports so that you're able to stay housed. We will continue to support the province as they open shelters and housing projects. We provide municipal services like snow clearing, garbage. We do some repair work and we help make referrals and so on. We are undergoing a review of our approach to homelessness. So 2 years ago, we had 200 people sleeping rough with no shelter beds or any resources available. So the municipality focused on helping people survive. Well, now there are resources available. They may not match up, but can we retool some of those spaces to meet people's needs so we can continue to move people out? And that's going to require us to look at doing some things differently, which we're going to do. We continue to want to look at the root causes of homelessness. A great thing that many of you are familiar with is the social determinatives of health. Well, those pieces play very much into why are people becoming homeless. And I showed you a slide that had a breakdown of that, but it included things like lack of income, healthcare issues, and things like that. So what causes homelessness and how do we solve that problem? One of my favorite quotes is from Desmond Tutu, and they're talking about jumping in and rescuing people from a fast-flowing river. And his suggestion is, well, let's go upstream and find out who's pushing them in. So we know the best solution to homelessness is prevention. So how do we do that? How do we reduce the number of people in encampments? When people are sleeping rough, it is bad for their mental health, their physical health. It's bad for their health. We know declines, mental health, physical health. We know that substance abuse disorder grows. There is nothing good about being in an encampment for anybody, but also encampments are bad for the surrounding community. Community disturbances, the loss of assets, the violence that it sometimes comes with homelessness. All of those things impact the people living around encampments, and it also impacts the businesses around encampments. I have lots of information about businesses that have had to hire more staff because their staff don't feel safe working alone. We've had vandalism to businesses. There's a business in Halifax that has a window broken very regularly, and that costs $3,500 to that business owner, small business owner, every month to replace the window. And so we know that leaving people in encampments and not having housing for people is very, very bad for everyone. We need to develop an approach to vehicular homelessness. We have people who sleep in RVs. We have people who sleep in their cars. And so how do we provide them safe places to do that? And then how do we get them out of a vehicle and into a home? And finally, we continue to work on a report card that we'll be able to bring to regional council, but to also to groups like this that we can share and we can provide updates on where are things going and how are they going. And we hopefully can set milestones that will tell us how we're doing in terms of working on homelessness. And many of these things aren't in the control of the municipality, but still we can measure and then as a community have more discussions and things like that. So these are some of sort of the updates and some of the big things that I hope you can take away from the presentation. Happy to answer some questions. So Chair, that is the presentation. We'll certainly make that available to folks. And happy to answer questions if anybody has things they'd like to dig into.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Max. Looking at the speakers list, first up, we have Oliver Keith, if you feel ready to ask a question or something.
Yeah, gonna need, first off, well, great presentation, Max. I think there's a lot of information I'm trying to just download. If anything, like I applaud you at least for the information. I know one challenge is, at least you mentioned the research aspect, and this is very valuable data, one that like I think could be very quickly or at least slowly picked apart. But yeah, Rochelle, if I could just have one more minute to kind of absorb my thoughts, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I will come back to you. Cool. Next on the list is Glenn Babcock.
I feel like I'm just going to repeat the same thing. I did find all the information about the demographics to be very, very enlightening, and I think useful, at least in, in those times when I might get into conversations about homelessness. It does dispel some of the misinformation out there that people have all come here from elsewhere and become our problem. Well, it's our own friends and neighbors that are having these problems, not just people from elsewhere. And I think it's important for people to know that. It seems pretty comprehensive in terms of the work that you're doing, looking at everything from the root causes of it through to maybe some, I guess there aren't really too many quick wins, but certainly different areas that can perhaps be addressed sooner than others. So all in all, I found it very enlightening, lots of information to work with, and I'm sure, much like Oliver, the longer I think about it, the more things will come to me. But thank you very much for the presentation.
Well, Glenn, and to Oliver as well, if you get a question that comes to you later, again, Elizabeth can easily connect us so that I can give you an answer or things like that, as can Councillor White, Purdy, and Cinnamon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Nick Harris.
Great, thank you. And yeah, great presentation. I think it's always important to kind of see the stats and see kind of where we're at in terms of numbers and impact and that kind of thing. And yeah, echo some of the other members in terms of, I think research is just super important, knowing who's there, why they're there, how we can help. It's all part of the puzzle, complex puzzle. I did have a couple questions. So obviously, I'm glad to see that there's some stats around kind of information about kind of health-related concerns. I think the bracket was, and there's about 40%, I think, that had a physical mobility concern mentioned. But I'm wondering too, like, is there any data, like there was a point about unsafe and unfit housing. Does that include like inaccessible housing as well? Like, is that what unfit is defined as, or is unfit just generally like it's not habitable? So I'm just wondering if there's any stats on like, okay, so there's 40% that have physical mobility concern. Are they also homeless because of the lack of accessible housing as a component? So that's one.
We certainly could dig a little bit into that, but the short answer is yes. There are some folks that are challenged to find accessible space. So we, for example, have people in wheelchairs experiencing homelessness.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that was kind of a point that we're looking at. And then also I wasn't sure if there was like a standard for, shelter accessibility and housing option accessibility. So like just something to like as are kind of part of that HRM review of approach to homelessness, I think looking at wherever possible, like universal design. So not necessarily just having like designated accessible units. I think, that's great anyway. But I think just thinking about like universal design of like, how do we make this accessible for everyone as best as we can, as opposed to, here's our 3 units that are accessible, just because again, disability and ability are very much a spectrum. And so you can be both able-bodied and then very quickly have a disability as well. So just thinking about, if there are some numbers that back up, okay, people are becoming homeless because there's not, accessible housing options, or, there are those housing shelter places or spots that we have available, but, individuals who have mobility devices, can't access them because they're not accessible. Just kind of thinking about that bigger picture of, what can we do to kind of move the needle there? And I think just, in terms of our kind of committee, that's just one thought that came to my mind is like, can we just put that out there and, and have that as a consideration? I'm sure it is part of the conversation for sure, but that was just something that popped in my head. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Nicholas, just one thing, I guess, on that. I would commend the province, who is responsible for the shelters and temporary housing, on their commitment to accessibility. Like everywhere they set something up has at least one, if not more, accessible showers and things like that. So I think very conscious of making sure that there are accessible spaces. I think some of the challenges are some of the lower rent housing options are not in accessible spaces because they're in older buildings. And so that's, I think, a challenge in the housing sector, is to make sure that that people have access to that.
It's pervasive across the board for
Yeah.
sure, but thank you so much. And that was it for me.
Thanks, Nick. Moving on to Anne Sinclair.
Yes, hi, thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. And I had the same question as Nicholas, but he said it much better than I was going to. So thank you. Thank you both. And yeah, if you can add to the data, I mean, so much wonderful data, and how many, and I know there's been great incentives from the province on any sort of new or upgraded shelters to be accessible. So that is impressive. I had another point though that has to do with a more general issue, and it might be seen more as semantics, but to me, it's an approach, and it could be only having to do with the way the federal system is set up for doing the point in time work, which is one of your screenshots was saying that the main reason, I think it was the top reason for homelessness is lack of income. And I'm wondering why, and so that's the onus on the individual. And I'm wondering why it isn't lack of affordable alternatives.
Because we asked the people what they said the reason was for them being homeless, and they said lack of income.
Okay.
So in
thank
other
you.
reporting, we talk a lot about the lack of deeply affordable housing. But in this case, that was a report of the answer that people had said.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying.
But great point about the lack of deeply affordable housing. Absolutely.
Thank you. Next up is Jamil Sino.
Hi, Max. Thank you so much for your presentation. I do have a question. I noticed that a lot of this had to do with, well, this report was housing and homelessness, and I understand that the people who were asked questions were people who were currently unhoused.
Yeah.
So my question then is, well, how many houses currently remain vacant in the province? I know that there have been reports once upon a time that stated vacancy rates. I don't know if that is part of your research. And then second of all, I think a question is, why hasn't there been incentives to develop more public housing by the province, and a push for development of public housing? And so I guess when we talk about a lack of affordable income, what has the province set, if any, for standards for price per square foot with regards to the minimum wage or against the minimum wage, and if that's something that we should start taking a look at? Because I noticed that there is a lot of new development specifically around the peninsula, but when you take a look at them, they are, I mean, cutouts and like cookie cutter luxury apartments, which I think against the current minimum wage is not really affordable for a general bulk of the city. So we are talking about, accessibility with regards to housing. And I think you mentioned it earlier, and it was brought up earlier, where there are many low cost, well, I would use low cost even very loosely. A lot of the older buildings are what we can generally consider low cost, where they don't have amenities such as elevators. I know the building that I live in, I wouldn't consider low cost and doesn't have an elevator in it. So it wouldn't even be considered accessible. So I'm wondering, with regards to this, what percentage of houses are currently owned by people who commodify housing? So real estate investment firms, landlords who are looking to make a quick dollar off of housing and not actually providing housing for the sake of living. If those numbers are available to you, or if that's something that could potentially be explored that could also answer a lot of questions, because I'm of the mindset that I think there's a lot of conflict of interest when it comes to housing in this province, and policymakers around the subject have no incentive to promote public housing, which, I mean, we can start like that conversation and it would solve a lot of problems in the long term. But it's sort of difficult to know. We can foresee that that there is going to be a lot of new unhoused people in the future in the next 10 years based on the models that you have discussed in your report. But I'm interested to see what the percentage of vacancy rates in these new developments will be based on the current trend in those 10 years as well. And yeah, so I don't know if that's something that is within your realm or your capacity to look at, but I would love to see those numbers. Or if you know where you can point me towards, that would be great.
Well, all of the things that you've asked about the province, we need to ask someone from the province to answer, because we can't speak on their behalf and so on. Some of the numbers around housing and so on would be available from StatsCan, and also would be available from CMHC data. They do a report every quarter, I believe, or twice a year, that has some of that information in it. So we can certainly look to connect you with some of those pieces of data and stuff. But the questions around public housing and things like that, and how many vacant homes are there in Nova Scotia, really have to be a conversation with someone from the province. So I would recommend you invite somebody to one of the meetings who can give you that.
Okay. Are you aware of a representative who may be aware of those data points within the province that we can have a conversation with, or is that a position that was never brought up?
No, I mean, we certainly know who works in the housing and divisions of the province, so we can certainly I can certainly provide you a referral of someone to go reach out to talk about that, or to invite to the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I would look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Celine Vatour.
Okay. Hi, Max. It's
Hi,
nice
Celine.
to see
How
you
are you?
again. Good. I mean, you've seen me in the worst crisis point 2 years ago at the town hall. I can gladly say 2 years later, it's a much better story. I'm at the safest point, not totally out, but at the safest point I've ever been. And employment is almost full-time, so I do feel like I will be able to reach that autonomy that I've been looking for so much. So it's been a pretty big fight. So thankfully, I got these slides earlier, so I got to work things out, because I really have to script everything I say, especially the last piece really needs to be scripted. Technically, I have 3 questions, but I think I'm going to focus on just 2 for now, and then if there's time at the end, I'll bring up the 3rd. So as to what's pertaining to review HRM's approach to homelessness, complete chronically homelessness research, look to address the root causes of homelessness. All right, so going for that. As we traditionally look to academic researchers and external consultants, I'm particularly concerned as an advocate, because I've been seeing this pattern for a while now, when the people most affected are treated primarily as subjects rather than as equal partners in the process. I feel we can pretty much say that's happening in all kinds of levels of disability politics. In my experience, I have witnessed a pattern of paternalism in how vulnerable populations are engaged in these types of settings. How is the municipality ensuring that research into chronic homelessness does not exploit those with lived experience for the benefit of academic or consultancy careers, and instead invest in hiring, compensating, and empowering individuals from within these communities as leaders and co-researchers? Because that's the thing. They are co-researchers. They are co-consultants. You know, I've consulted for free and done research for free. And I have been thanked many times, but thanks thanks. I would like to see it in dollar signs for the amount of pain and burden it is to be able to offer something tangible for them to work with, right? So I really do believe that we need to start changing kind of the attitude that we have towards the people that we claim to help. They are part of the team and they should be compensated accordingly because, again, they're giving a lot of their time. They're really offering up a lot of their vulnerability, and it's not easy after every advocacy meeting, I promise, because sometimes psychologically it does affect you for a couple of days. So I really want that to be put into account. Does that ever come up as a topic, as a question?
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of the chronically and episodically homeless research. It's being done by not by an academic agency. It's being done by a service provider. And the only people being asked or consulted are those with living and lived experience. And they are compensated for their time, both in prep and for the time at or above living wage.
Thank you. I'm actually really happy to hear this because, again, I've noticed that there's still other places that need to learn from that. I really applaud that. The second topic is a little bit much more of a deeper topic for me, hence why, too, it has to be really scripted for me to read this. So, and given it relates a lot to the situation that I was experiencing. So, based on the data that you gave, about 14% of homeless are due to conflict with a partner or spouse. You have quoted it as intimate partner violence. Based on both data and lived experience, it's clear that for many, especially women and gender diverse individuals, homelessness isn't the result of personal failure, but of being forced to leave unsafe homes due to abuse. According to available data, at least like we're saying, at least 14% of homelessness cases are linked to conflict with a partner or spouse. From what I've observed, it seems far too easy in this province for abusive partners to walk away without any accountability, especially in cases where financial abuse is involved. Survivors, meanwhile, are left to navigate housing instability, poverty, and social service systems that don't always see the full picture of how they ended up there. And I do want to actually add, there's nothing like the burden of proof, the trauma to offer evidence of what's going on with you, to be so vulnerable to say what kind of help you need, etc. And again, like I said earlier, people do benefit from your intel, okay? And it's just, and then they just whisk you off, right? This raises serious concerns about how our homelessness response system and the policies that guide it address the root causes of housing instability for survivors of intimate partner violence. Therefore, I have the following question. Given that a significant portion of homelessness stems from intimate partner conflicts, what data does the municipality have on the gender and age breakdown of those impacted? And what targeted policies exist to support survivors, particularly those experiencing financial abuse, in securing long-term housing stability? Additionally, how is the municipality working to hold perpetrators accountable so that the burden of violence, including economic control, does not fall solely on those trying to escape it? So that could be more relevant to the HRP on how they're handling these situations, right? So I would like to know your take on what I've approached with that.
Well, I think you bring up some really serious issues and challenges for folks. I think for the perpetrators of violence, that is an HRP issue, and you really need to talk to them about that issue. I do, in terms of housing policies, need to remember again that the housing end of this is handled by the province.
Yes.
And so I think we go back to, I think it was, I'm not sure who it was who brought that up. Jamal, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah, that was covered for sure. But I think maybe
we need to bring the people with that information to help you. I will say one thing that perhaps the municipality is doing. It was announced the other day. The municipality is launching a care team, which is a civilian-led response to crisis.
Yes.
So I think that's an example of something the municipality is doing that will help folks in that situation that is different, that is leading edge, and other cities are launching these type of care teams to be able to respond.
Right.
So I think that's an example of what the municipality is doing.
So one thing I'd like to also highlight, because we talked about HRP, and I could probably point into victim services. The one thing that in my experience, what goes on with information? Because obviously you're saying, what is it, a civil team, what was the name of the group?
Civilian-led crisis
Civilian-led,
response team.
okay. So when we're talking about organizations that specialize in intimate partner violence, like in the care of, etc., it's in my observation for the last couple of years is that not everyone has the same information from each other. What one organization will believe could differ entirely from even what victim services believe, and then what from a police officer believes or understands about the justice system is also different from victim services. So I'm going to just point this out, that there is a really big problem with silo mentality where nobody really knows. Everybody has kind of like, they have something that they guide themselves by, but it's very different from often very different from each other. And that is kind of potentially dangerous to people who are victims if they do not access reliable information. Like, I just feel like there's not enough of a like consensus that people can base themselves on, and to be able to navigate that, just kind of throwing it out there. So I'm just gonna kind of just one last, because I don't want to take up the time either. Okay, and so when you're mentioning too, like, as I said on statistics, are there statistics of how many are women and gender diverse individuals, also even age group? I'd be interested. Is there any of that data?
Yeah, you could take the point in time count data, which is held by AHANS, and it can be segmented into all of those kind of pieces around the data that's there. They've got the huge database from the count.
Oh, okay. Is that what you mean by the 90-page report?
That would have some of it.
Okay.
And then again, you could even have talked to them about breaking it down even further.
Okay.
But the 90-page report would give you lots more than we've shared here.
Okay. If you would have a chance to type in the acronym for the governing body that you mentioned, because like my auditory cannot process what it sounds like, that would be appreciated. So Rachel, how much time do I have left? Maybe I should skip to the next and wait later.
Yeah, maybe we'll go to the next person and then we can come back around, because there are a few people who had some more things.
Yeah,
Cool.
no,
Okay.
we'll do it that way. That's good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Aline.
Thank you.
All right, next on the list is Councillor Laura White.
Thanks, Max. I feel well informed between today and we recently had another meeting as well. But I guess my question was, for the benefit of this group and anyone watching, is just when people have concerns, like, what is the best venue to bring them to show what they want to see different? Like, who do they go to with that? And then also, just if people are looking to help in some way, do you have any suggestions for people?
Sure. So I think the concern is, I think who to go to is dependent on what the concern is. I think if the concern is about a criminal act, you should be reaching out to HRP, because those are the folks that are empowered and trained to deal with that. If you've seen something that you're concerned about or you want to express, calling or emailing 311 does create a service request that we respond to. So I think that's another option. If you're looking to find some resources for people, 211. So if you know somebody who needs help, 211 does provide referrals. It's on their website, is the phone number and email of every service provider. And that's another place. You can also, again, reach out to 311 and they'll send it to us and we'll follow back up with you. I think if you're looking to help, what I always start that conversation with is, what are you feeling called to do? Some people are feeling very called to help youth. Well, then Phoenix House, Homebridge are places that work specifically with youth. If you're looking for women and families, the YWCA, Adsum House do great work in there. If you're looking to work with men who are experiencing homelessness, there's a number of people, but I would say Shelter Nova Scotia is a great place to reach out. The North End Community Health Center does health support to people. If that's something that you feel interested in, they are really, really good.
They're good.
And so, those are places I would go. Ultimately, if you want to help and you don't know where to go, reach out to me. I am happy to give you a quick referral once you tell me what you're interested in. And I've gotten calls about everything you can imagine. People who want to help people with their pets who are homeless, and people who want to help people with socks and with other things. Like, Haligonians are so keen and willing to help. It's amazing. They're also frustrated and they're scared sometimes. But every conversation I start with is I want to help people. And so if people are stuck for where to go, send me an email. Again, for the group on this group, Elizabeth can certainly help me. For people who are listening online, the other person I would reach out to is your counselor. Counselors are super connected with the people in their community who offer support and services, and they can give you great referrals, or they can even reach out directly to me and say, hey, I've got somebody who's got this, and to help. And we've helped people with furniture they want to offer help with, and everything you can imagine. Winter's coming. Every organization that works with people experiencing homelessness is getting ready for winter. And so there's lots of help there. So any of those outlets, I think, counselor, are a good way if you want to help.
Thank you, Max. Thank you.
And sorry for selling you out if you didn't want me to, but
No, that's fine. And
the three
I
of
guess
you
my
are
other
amazing
concern-
people.
The other thing we've talked about is as people move inside, and maybe this is less seen than it was at one time, I just think that the public conversation needs to continue. So
agreed, absolutely.
About the next steps. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Councillor, you're still muted.
I think you're muted. Oh, there we go.
I pressed the button and then it muted me. All right. So first, thank you, Rochelle. And thank you, Max. Your presentation was illuminating. As always, I wind up taking away something new every time you present this type of information to council. So I'm greatly appreciative of that. And I do completely respect and appreciate your calling us out as councillors as resources that the public can reach out to. I would encourage the community to reach out to multiple stakeholders. I mean, reaching out to you in particular as the guardian of HRM wide information, and then those of us that are in the community. I mean, there are some, you cited several community organizations that provide services throughout HRM, or at least within certain pockets of HRM. And in community, we councillors are aware of some other service providers that may not provide services on a regular basis. They may be a little bit more sporadic. They may provide services only on a seasonal basis, largely to do with what kind of resources they have available from within their volunteering community. I've got several of them in District 16, for example. And so, I would really encourage the public to keep councillors as part of that conversation, but we know our limitations. And so I myself have reached out to you and your team on a number of occasions when I knew for sure I didn't have the right answer. One question that I have for you that leapt into mind is you mentioned the distinction of the point in time count and the survey now happening at ostensibly different times. They're happening at different intervals anyway. You referred to the point in time occurring annually, whereas the survey, rather than being consolidated with the point in time and being done every 2 years, that will move to every 3 years. And I'm just wondering where is the separation in the data that each of those two things, when performed collectively as a singular reaching out to the community, what's the separation in the information that they then collect? Does that mean that there's a gap in, at least in some of our knowledge, by the fact that the survey component will only be done every 3 years? And so what does that do to our ability to put that information into the models that you referred to that allow us to better predict and respond to changing conditions over time?
I think in short, Counselor, a lot of the data that splits out gender information or what people's needs are and so on is actually fairly consistent over multiple point in time counts. It's the count of people that changes the most frequently. So I think the feeling was, and to try and maintain sort of some fidelity to what our limited resources, the feeling was every year we need the number, but every 3 years should provide us a guide to see the changes in percentages and things like that. But you take the 2022 report and the 2024 report, the 1 in 4 of people who are homeless that were formerly involved with the child welfare system is consistent. The 1 in 5 after-birth brain injury is consistent. So I think what they looked to do, and when they had this discussion federally, was how do we get the most bang for the buck? And numbers are really important every year. Changing trends, and is the mix of people changing? I think they felt that every 3 years would be sufficient to tell them that. But there will be some changes to what we have as available information. One of the things that we're most concerned about is when do we do the count? So, for example, we did the 2022 count in spring. We did the 2024 count in November. And so that we know that in spring is when we see large increases of people experiencing homelessness, and it reduces in the winter because people perhaps have an option that they can go to for a few months, but not all the time. So perhaps family or friends will help them out. We spoke about intimate partner violence. I don't have numbers for this, but we do know, for example, that there are women and children who stay in an abusive situation in the winter that might consider other options in a different time of year. And that's terrifying to think about. But
it is. And I'm wondering whether or not we should read into the fact that the feeling, or at least it seems that the inference would be that the statistical relevance of the changing metrics around all of that reasons behind homelessness side of the data table. We've seen, certainly over the course of the point in time counts for the years that you cited, such a significant growth in that population that the feeling is that now we're in a position where we can elongate the amount of time between which we collect those finer points of metadata that can be associated with each individual, because the sample size is getting bigger, and therefore the statistical relevance of it can be extended across a longer period of time. And that in itself is a fairly disheartening piece of information to come to. So I guess my only initial concern with that is that there could be people that become homeless in that time and leave and wind up finding housing, and they are never counted. I mean, they might show up on the point of time, but they may not act. The factors that resulted in them being homeless in the first place may not be captured in the survey if those periods are so far apart that they could be in and out of the point in time list before that data is collected. And so there may be some meaning, some underlying meaning from that data that we otherwise miss. So I'm a little concerned with that, but I understand why the feeling is that, as you say, in order to get the best bang for our buck, we wind up focusing on getting that data a little bit later because we know that the trends are relatively stable.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I will pass that on though, Jean, to the point in time count folks, just so that they know we brought it up and are concerned about it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. These were great questions, actually, really good conversation. But I just want to give a shout out to Max because he's kind of like the HRM superhero. This guy can handle stress. He can handle multiple crises going on at once. He's a problem, like he's a solution finder. I mean, that was my first term in council when council realized that, something had to be done and Max was hired on. And so I've seen kind of the evolution of how this has gone. And I mean, it's been amazing. Max is so responsive. Anything that is needed, he is on it. And if he can't, he knows who can and just directs the way. So just want to say, really appreciate you, Max, and your team and all the work that you've done behind the scenes that we don't even know about. Just very thankful for what you do.
Well, thanks, Trish. Next up is Kathy Stevenson.
I have a question. Can you hear me? I had to shift my whole computer. I have two screens now. So I was actually homeless, and I have a question. It seems like the same hole that caused my homelessness as a teenager. I'm not sure if it's been addressed, but I'm not sure if you can help. If you had discussed that people that were in the foster care system prior had a higher instance of perhaps being homeless than the general population. If you're not in the foster care system before the age of 16, you have no chance of getting any type of back into that system or entering that system beyond the age of 16. That leaves an age gap between 16 and 18. And there's nothing you can do. You can't legally sign a lease. You can't get a credit card. You can't get a checking account. So if you end up, your parents are no longer desire your presence in their home at 16, you're sort of floating around for 2 years. You can't get into university because you can't get a student loan without your parents' signature. You have to appeal it. The appeal process at that time took 2 years before I could get a student loan. And that seems to still exist. Where are all the, and I'm going to be maybe a bit sexist, there is no shortage of people willing to offer some young women alternative solutions. Where are they? What numbers catching them?
Well, I think again, I'm not the child welfare system is managed by the province, so again, you really need to bring somebody in who has some expertise and can speak on that. I do know that they have made a number of changes to the system to try and address the hard cutoffs that some people face, and that leads them into challenges. But you'd really have to bring somebody from child welfare in to talk about them, because I'm not intimately familiar with them. I do know they have made some changes in that area. And I know that organizations like Phoenix House have significant expertise in trying to address some of the stuff that you've brought up.
Yeah, but the thing is, the system cuts you off at 16. You're not a child. You can move out of your home, quit school, get married, do pretty much anything you want at 16. So that's the problem. You're sort of in a Schrodinger's age period there, where you're not quite an adult, you're not a child. So there's 2 years, and if you're in a vulnerable situation, those 2 years are also prime where predators are going to start swarming around you. So that's I thought that had all been addressed decades ago, but I suspect it may not have been. So.
Some has been, I know that. But again, I would recommend that the committee bring somebody in who can speak to that, because that's their expertise, because I really can't. Other than I can tell you, I know things have been done because I've watched some of those changes.
Okay. All right, thank you. It was a great talk.
Thank you. All right, technically I'm next on the list, but I wanted to swoop back to Oliver because Oliver didn't have anything yet. So I figured that made sense. And then I'll say something and then I'll go back to see who else had any extra things after that.
Thanks, Rochelle. Okay, after a bit of thinking. So Max, I was thinking about the models that you mentioned earlier.
Perfect time to be frozen.
I was going to say he's frozen for me. But...
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Oh,
am I
oh,
back?
there you go. You're back. Yeah,
I know
you're back.
what. That's horrible timing.
Or great timing.
Yeah, literally. Okay, anyway, sorry, Max. I was thinking about the models that you mentioned in the beginning. The idea where there is like within these models, there's no at least future outcome in which the homelessness problem improves. I sometimes I recognize and I completely believe that there is a trend towards those numbers, but sometimes I'm a little hesitant when it comes to these models and their reliability. I was wondering if there is access to I guess the different factors that were implemented within the model. And I'm also curious to know how the application of people with disabilities and like those related factors were implemented within this model. Because I guess just as like a data source and a policy tool, it's important to be careful around how these models are constructed. Thanks.
So Oliver, great question. The data comes from an organization called Health Seekers Technology. I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect.
They are the only folks who are doing that kind of predictive work that we can find.
Okay.
But they certainly have lots of detail. I totally agree with you about predictability. There are lots of things that could happen in the next 10 years that could change that direction. I think, but I think, like for example, there is a whole community here in the city that is being essentially redone. They're knocking all the homes down and redoing them, and it will go from what was a very affordable community to a community that is not at all affordable. And it's going to displace well over 100 families. So those things are hard to predict. So I think your caution about taking the numbers specifically as, well, that's what it's going to be. What I'm really interested in is the growth sort of trend, and that the fact that nobody is seeing in the next 10 years that we are going to build enough, fast enough, at the deeply affordable rates it needs to be to stop the inflow into homelessness at a significant degree. But yes, I think your comments are well served, and the health seeker stuff is based on Ontario, so we just apply the percentage changes to it, but then we verify it with looking at our own experience and see the same sort of numbers. But there are things that can be done. So, for example, the province has committed to building some more public housing. I think it's 200 and some units in one project, which is 2 spaces, and then a second project. I think if we remember back what was in the news, the wait list for public housing is over 6,000 people. So it's going to make a difference, but Build Canada Homes is going to come in the next few years and use modular construction to create deeply affordable housing. what's interesting in their model is they're saying that it must be guaranteed to have sufficient support locally so that it will remain deeply affordable. So they're not looking at creating housing that will be deeply affordable for 5 years or 10 years. They want what gets built into that project to be in perpetuity. So those things will make a difference. So I think there's other factors to look at. For me, the important thing was to realize that none of the data and the markers is telling us that we're getting better in the medium term. And so that we need to start our planning and thinking about what we're going to do to address the crisis in the fact that there is no quick fix.
If I could just do just a follow-up comment, I think that's great. And I also think I at least appreciate the framing of your presentation. I think sometimes, like you mentioned, it's easy to take these predictive modelings as a tool and present them as more than what they are. And that's a model that we need to be kind of wary of at points. And so I just think going forward, I appreciate the usage of the qualitative data to show that what comes from people's voices as opposed to the ideas that could potentially occur in the future. Anyway, thanks, Max. Great presentation as always.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, I'll ask my sort of questions and then I'll take it back to, I think Celine had something to say, and I'll like check in with the rest of the group as well. Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. I always appreciate when you come to present to us because I do feel like, you know, housing being a provincial issue means that the HRM is kind of always taking a reactive approach. And I think that from a reactive lens, like you're doing a lot of work. You know, obviously there's always some people who are getting missed, and yeah, no system is perfect, but I do think that like you're doing some good stuff. So thank you for that. But from that same lens, like, I guess knowing that so many of the more like top-down issues that are creating a lot of homelessness are sort of coming from a provincial lens, and that it seems like from the municipality, we're only really able to take these more sort of like reactive, like I don't want to call them band-aid solutions because I think that sometimes they are better than band-aids, but they are still kind of like, you know, like clogging a hole, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know, like patching up a hole as they come up instead of being like, let's get a new bucket. So I guess, yeah, like what is there anything in the works? Is there any planning happening that can actually create some, some sort of top down's not quite the right word, but I guess some like preventative measures, like what are the preventative options that are coming from the HRM? Like what can we expect? What are we hoping for? What's the plan here, I guess?
Well, so, I mean, I'll go back to the thing I mentioned during Celine's question. As we go out and do research on those that are struggling with maintaining housing, so they're chronically homeless, it's to sit with them and for them to tell us, why is it not working for them? It's not our job to figure out why it's not working. We don't have a clue. But it's their job to tell us, I go into these places and here is why I fail. And so that then as we go forward, well, what's the new resource that's being designed? Can we design it to address what is causing the failure? And so, I mean, one example I think that's controversial, but I think it's important, is how do we support people struggling with substance abuse disorder and allow them to have housing or to have a shelter space and not get kicked out for their activity, because it's problematic. It's an illegal activity. But we know that we cannot treat addiction in an encampment. So there's an example of a model. Can we quantify how many people that is? And can we then quantify how many are interested in a rehab or a process to reduce their substance use? And how many are just, I'm good? And we need to be able to, at some level, respect people's choices, but also address the larger community safety option, and perspective and so on. But it'll make a really big difference if we came back and said, arguably, there's 50 people suffering from this disease, and 40 of them want help and 10 of them don't. Well, now we know, okay, we need to talk about the 10 people that aren't interested, because if you're not willing to participate and keen to, you'll never make it through a rehab process. But what do we do for these 40 people who want that? So for me, that's the proactive piece. It's in 2023, there were 200 people homeless on the street. And as of today, we're less than 100. So in 2 years, we've cut it by 50%, while it's grown by almost 100%. So there's some really good news there, but we do need to start digging into this to figure out, okay, what do people need? And it's individual. People love to ask for, what's the solution? Well, there's no solution. There's 20 solutions, because people are different and need different things and have different experiences. But I think we really need to be able to quantify what the needs are so that we can then have discussions about, hey, how do we adapt this resource to meet these folks' need, or do they need a new resource, or does it have to be done differently, and so on. So for me, that's proactive. I also think the province does a lot of work in how to prevent someone from becoming homeless in the first place. I think we need to help with that as well, because that's again, preventative. Best solution of all is to stop somebody from becoming homeless before it happens. And there's lots of examples of that. There are pure fiscal reasons. Something bad happens in your life and you suddenly have an unexplained expense that you can't manage, and that may throw you towards homelessness. But it also may be something else that happens, and we need to have supports and resources that will do that. And that was probably a really long answer to your question, but I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think it had to be a long answer because it was a big question. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I will never think it's too controversial to talk about substance use. I think that like it's a really complicated issue and people need supports for it. And I think is a big reason why people are getting kicked out of shelters and finding that shelters don't suit them. And yeah, so I do think about that a lot. So I'm glad that you brought it up. Yeah. I know some people are not interested in becoming sober because that's just not the world that everyone lives in.
Or they're not ready for that discussion.
For sure. Yeah.
It can be that too. It can be later on they might be interested or they might not. Like there's so many parts of it. My thing is we understand that substance abuse is a disease. I think we need to approach it in that manner.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like there was something. I wrote some other question and it was around like, is there, and I don't know if this is an HRM like thing or if this has to be a provincial thing, but is there any work being done to look into like how shelters operate and like, you know, because I think sometimes we put a lot of like not just the onus, but a lot of the like research that we're doing on like specific people and figuring out why they're not having a good time in a shelter system, you know, to say for lack of better terms. But I wonder like how much work is being done from sort of like the larger body of the shelter systems and like are different shelters, you know, are the rules too strict? Are they kicking people out because of like one staff member that just like has an issue with someone's gender or sexuality or what have you? Or people who are like shelter workers who are burnt out and then taking it out on the people that they work with. Like, I guess I have questions about how shelters are operating and like how that workplace is for people who are working there, but also how that's then contributing to people being forced out of shelter systems because they like aren't respected there or like their needs aren't being met, but also like part of that may be because of staffing. So yeah, I guess it's like a real big picture thing also, but I wonder if there's any work being done there.
So there is work being done there. Again, really because temporary housing and shelters are provincial. It's a provincial piece of work that we're contributing, but there is talk about standards. The research that we're doing on why people aren't successful will be aggregated to do that. But perhaps the most exciting thing is an initiative driven from the province about shared data. And so that we're able to track and they're able to look at through aggregated data. So it's not about people, but to look at how many people are being removed and why, and to be able to look at those kind of things that I think will help with that. So are we there? No. Are we on the road to what you're describing? Absolutely.
Cool. That's good to hear. Great. Okay. Thank you. That is all for me. I'm going to throw it back to Celine. And then if anyone else had any final comments or questions, feel free to just like put the little hand emoji up and I'll get to you in order.
Hey. All right. Hi again. I wanted to also thank you for acknowledging that substance abuse is a disease, because in my advocacy, I always frame it as a disability, you know, because I have people close to me who have gone through, who go through this, and I like, again, even just framing it as a disorder as well. Because again, even our mayor, before he was elected, cough, cough, had tried to kind of stigmatize this, and you know, I just wanted to put that little thing in. Okay, so earlier you were talking about civil support. So what was it called again? I'm sorry.
Civilian-led, well, it's crisis, the civilian-led crisis response service.
Okay, now this is where, okay, because like I say, I have had to access a fair deal of public, you know, like of services in my day. And the one thing that I'd like to highlight is on vetting people who work or even volunteer. I do have concerns about sometimes it's not strict enough. And even just earlier, like I tell you, you know, as much as we have a civilian coming in, and sometimes, yeah, there is a means where it feels more comfortable, it feels more safe. However, I want to frame it that it doesn't feel safe in intimate partner violence. I think the biggest struggle that you have to try to get help in any way, shape, or form is that you have to talk to many people. Even me talking right now is risk, right? There is risk on how many people you have to talk to get help. And that's why Just Leave is just not that easy as people would think. Because most often too, you're going to be given a lot of information that you will later find out that that's not true. It's incorrect. But the other interesting thing that I'd like to bring out, and this was actually something that I was going to approach that had nothing to do with IVP. It was directed to support new provincial shelters and housing initiatives. Now, when it comes to shelters, the one thing that was highlighted to me a couple of years ago about shelters is that some of them are shady. You know, like we've just recently found one of them to be responsible for drug trafficking. Speaking with even the MNFC, the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, learning more and more about the pipeline of human trafficking. When we're even especially talking about intimate partner violence, those situations you leave, you're very alone, you're very isolated, so therefore you're very vulnerable to people who will act like do-gooders. And then you could be led to a trap, is what I mean. Okay, so I'm just trying to put it in this way. I'm going to read it from the script. Are there any independent watchdogs or oversight bodies in place to ensure that homelessness support services are not only ethical and outcome focused, but also actively preventing exploitation, trafficking, maintaining a high standard of the people that are actually working in this? Because I'm going to tell you right now, as could just say I'm single now, single mom life, but I am more ready to date. And even just scrolling on a dating app, people even just identifying as social workers. If you even looked at their profile, you're like, I don't know if you should be a social worker type stuff. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I feel like there's just not enough vetting going on in public service. And I'm just curious if this is a topic in the HRM, if you care to share any of that, of how you vet people, especially now when we're talking that civil support, you know, civil support kind of, I would be a little concerned.
I think about shelters and so on, because they're provincially run, they do have some quality control pieces, but you should bring somebody from the province in to talk about it, because that's something that they manage. I think in terms of, for example, the new crisis response, there are feedback systems and there are evaluation systems to look at that. So we're building, for example, that service with some of those controls in place.
Okay, so how does the controls look like? Because like I'm also a support worker, so I am aware of some processes, and I'm just wondering.
There's a professional evaluation group's been hired to do that work and follow up with people after service and so on. So
Would you
that's
have
how
the
they're
name
doing it.
of that group, that professional?
Well, it's somebody we've contracted. We'd have to go back to the crisis diversion folks to get any more information from that. Because again,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
it's a different service.
Okay.
I just shared it because it was relevant to the question you were asking earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that really helps. Thank you. So yeah, no, it's just, I just wanted to bring this up. Like, there's just so much vulnerability when somebody goes in, because I even just wanted to even remark, there's one person that I've known through the years that goes up and down in homelessness. And this person here has always told me, I never ever go to any public services because the level of trust is just not there, especially given like if they disclose anything, they may become even more unsafe, that they would rather handle and take care of their homelessness by themselves because there is not enough of like a good trust of public servants. So it's just, that's also a comment, sorry. Yeah. I think most of what I'm bringing up right now is just to kind of like state stuff, perspectives, because again, I feel like we need more people to talk about their experiences. But again, anyways, thank you so much for this presentation. This was really great.
Okay, thanks, Celine. Go ahead, Jamil.
Max, I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned earlier at some point while in conversation with Rochelle that the first order of business is to reduce the number of people who have substance use disorder in order to get them housing. And my question to you is, why do you hold that belief? I think if we are to follow that line of thinking, that is discrimination for people who might have what we would call substance use disorder, and that is such a large window and such a term that is open for interpretation and ripe for discrimination. Because if we assign substance use disorder as a prerequisite, or not having substance use disorder as a prerequisite to housing, then why are people who are already housed with substance use disorder not unhoused, or vice versa, right? Like, what is to say that someone who has a substance use disorder but has a ton of money and many properties deserves more housing than someone who has an equivalent substance use disorder but also is now unhoused? And in order for them to receive housing, they must now first work through their substance use before achieving any form of housing. So my question is, like, is this a belief that you hold, or is this something that is, a standard set somewhere that we need to address by people? Because I think that in order for us to talk about housing and unhoused people, we must first reduce all of the barriers to housing. And I understand that, like, there's this level of, like, we need income, or we need, housing is owned by someone and therefore we rent it out, right? Like, these are things that we have set up as barriers. But to tell, like, me on an individual basis that people must be, walking the straight line in order for them to receive housing, then all of a sudden we are setting up these barriers that are really, like, very open for interpretation before we are able to provide housing for people. And then all of a sudden now we are only exacerbating the problem rather than actually working towards a solution.
Jamil, if I say, I don't believe I have ever said that somebody needs to be clean to get housing. In my whole life, I don't think I've ever said that. I don't believe that at all. So we have to go back to what I said that gave you that impression.
There was a point when you were saying earlier, for the first thing that we are looking to address is to reduce the number of people with substance use disorder in order for us to get them housing. I
don't, if I said it, I obviously wasn't clear, because that is not something I have ever said, and I have no recollection even tonight of saying that. What I said is, I believe one of the priorities needs to be to create an option for those that have failed repeatedly at housing and haven't been able to access housing with substance abuse disorder to get in. I also believe there is a group of people with substance abuse disorder that want to solve it. They want to address that. They don't want to live that way. And I think we need to create options to support them, because I think right now, and I could introduce you to a bunch of them, of people who would say, I don't want to live this way. But we cannot treat substance abuse disorder in an encampment. We can't treat it when you're sleeping on your buddy's floor. So we need to create supports to help those folks, because if they're losing their housing because of a substance abuse disorder, we have a problem, because we can't fix it outside. So we're continually shipping people without giving them any hope of success. I also, I believe, said that if we do the research, we get 50 people, we have 40 that want to address it and 10 who don't. It's a different solution for those folks. I'm not suggesting that the 10 who don't want to address it don't deserve housing. But I do suggest that they're having real challenges getting and keeping housing right now, and we've got to fix that. But that isn't about fixing substance abuse disorder. That may just be like a managed alcohol program where people are housed and they consume alcohol, and there's lots of options. But I don't believe there should be any barrier to housing. I'm a housing first advocate, which means I think you should go from 0 to permanent supported housing, nothing in between.
Okay. Thank you for your clarification. I may have misunderstood, and my apologies if I...
Oh, and if I said it wrong, I apologize too, but that's like, I'm a full advocate for housing first. Let's take the person and get you in permanent supported housing right off the bat. There should be nothing in between.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. That was very informative, and I think they're always thoughtful. I love this group. Thank you so much, Max, for being here and for giving us this presentation and explaining some stuff. And thanks for the work that you're continuously doing, because I think it's important. And yeah, I'm very appreciative of it. And I think that was echoed by many people on this committee. So thanks again. Bye, Max. All right. So next up on the agenda is probably going to be quick, which is good because we spent a lot of time talking about housing, which is great and clearly important. But next we just have the update on the 2025 town hall that's coming up very soon. Technically, I'm first on this list of updates, mainly just to let everyone know that we will have provincial representation at the town hall. The accessibility directorate is sending a couple of folks to sort of like be part of the booth part in the end, and so they'll be there, and that is going to be great because when people start asking questions during the panel and the Q&A about things that really are like a provincial issue, we can kind of send them to someone who can hopefully actually answer their question, which was part of the reason I thought it was important to have the accessibility directorate there. And I've told them this, so they know. Yes, I've been in
Let's
touch with
just
them.
remember, I'm the one who got them in. I'm just saying.
Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you, Celine.
Yeah, because
Celine, yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I'm at a point in my life where I've had too many people take credit lately. So.
Oh, yes. No, yeah. This was a decision that was made ahead of time. Celine did the work for that. I've just followed up with them to make sure that they're coming. So yeah, thank you, Celine.
Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Yeah. Okay, that's my update. That's it. I'm gonna pass it over to Melissa and then see if there's anything else that needs to be said or reminded about.
Thank you, Rochelle. I don't think there's much on our end either. I think everything that we referred to all the business units, myself and Elizabeth, we met with them over a week ago just to run through the expectation of what it means to be on the panel, what it means to have a booth, all of that stuff. And Elizabeth, I believe, sent out a reminder for you folks about what roles you were doing as volunteers and things like that. So, yeah, I think we're pretty good. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you had any other comments or anything you wanted to
Yeah, I just had one update. I know at the last meeting we had talked about making arrangements, or I had said that I would look into making arrangements for the leftovers following the event. So just confirming that I've reached out to and confirmed with Berry House on Gottingen Street, which is an emergency shelter for women and gender diverse individuals that they would accept the leftovers and those will be transported to the shelter after the town hall. And I've been in contact with Councillor White, who at the previous meeting had said she'd be able to take the leftovers over to a place that would accept them.
Yep, all set. I've booked my bike from my family.
Perfect. That's that was my only update.
There we go.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Purdy?
Yeah, I see
Councillor
Councillor Purdy's hand. There was a question in the chat just before that. Just what time should volunteers be there? Which I feel like is a quick answer, so I just wanted to do that before then going to Councillor Purdy.
Melissa, did we say, was it 4 or 5 p.m.?
I think 5.
Normally
Yeah.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Great. All right. I'm going to go to Councillor Trish Purdy and then Celine.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, if it's raining or nasty weather, I'll have my car there so I can help Councillor White with the food delivery. So,
Thank you.
Cool. Great. Thanks. Go ahead, Celine.
So pertaining to the time that we would need to be there, 5 o'clock would not work with me. Like, I finish work just around the corner, not far, at 6 o'clock. And I would like to work till then. I'd like to also highlight that I'm taking a $60 pay cut to be here. It cost me $60 to attend as a member. I'm just highlighting the many, many barriers that disabled advocates have. We give our time and we lose money all the time as a result. This is also part of why I never went forward to want to be elected as chair as a second time, because I think I calculated it would cost me like hundreds of dollars to be chair. So I just want to put this in perspective, because chair and vice chair are not paid for the hours that we work on a monthly basis. And I'm just saying that to the councillors as a big hint. It's time to pay us, because it's a lot of work. And right now I am losing $60 that I really shouldn't be losing. Anyway, that's just me having a little bit of an attitude. But 5 o'clock, can I do this at 6 o'clock?
Thanks, Celine. I mean, I think it would be okay if you showed up for 6. We'll just make sure that the whatever role you have is nothing that needs to be there ahead of time for.
I'm volunteering for the Q&A table.
Okay, yeah, that should be fine then.
That should be fine. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'll show up then, that's for sure. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Great. Any other questions or comments or clarifications? Oh, Melissa just put in the chat, 6 p.m. is completely fine for an arrival time if that is needed for any members. If you'll be arriving at 6, please let Elizabeth and myself know, which I feel like you've just done, Celine. So that's great. Cool. All right. Well, it seems like we are good to go for that. I will head down into the agenda for the date of the next meeting, which I also added to the agenda that we do have a date for a special meeting, which is next week, to hear about the snow plan and how that is going or not going. Well, it's a stakeholder engagement thing, if I'm not mistaken, but there's information about that in the email, and that starts at 4:30, so different timing. If you can attend, that is great. And then the next scheduled meeting that we have after the town hall is November 17th at our usual time, which is a Monday. So yeah, that's all for that. If that feels good for everyone, I can invite someone to call for adjournment of this meeting, and I don't need a seconder, I just need a mover.
I'll move to adjourn.
Great, thank you. So moved. The meeting is officially over. Thanks everyone for attending and
I
for
just
all your
want to
good
say
questions.
also thanks, because this is kind of my last, because next month is the end of it. So for me. So I just want to thank everybody for all the time spent, etc. So thank you.
Thanks, Celine.
Bye.
Thank you, Celine.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Gonna